Hey everyone, this is episode 300. Oh my goodness, I am so excited. The average podcast only makes it to about 10 episodes. Isn't that crazy? Like 80 something percent. And this is episode 300. So I wanted to really get on here and tell you what I've done in this episode. I have taken a lot of my podcast guests and we've done kind of a mashup. So we've taken clips from multiple podcasts and we have put those together so you can hear like the juiciest stuff and get the gold from the amazing experts that I've had on the show. I also want to thank you for being a guest, for being a subscriber, for being a listener. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart because I'm so honored and grateful for all of the amazing people that I've had on my show and the friends I've made and the partnerships I've built. It has been one of my favorite things that I've done in my business. And I really recommend, if you're not guesting on podcasts or you haven't created your own podcast, with the right strategy, it's just so phenomenal to have this be part of your business, especially if you're trying to build a brand, a visibility, build that celebrity brand so that you're seen and you're trusted and you are the authority in your space, which is what I teach people to do. So I have to walk my talk, right? But from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for being part of the show in whatever capacity that has been. And I can't wait to bring you many more great experts and episodes teaching you how to raise your influence, teaching you how to scale your business. And I hope that you found the show as valuable and have had as much fun watching and listening to the show as we have had. So thank you so much. And God bless you for being part of this. And here's the show.
Well, and I want to dive into this a little bit too, because one of the things, especially when you are getting close to retirement and the money that you've accumulated and might have investments, you can't afford the risk. You can't afford to lose that money. You've, worked your whole life, right, to build that. And that is one of the scariest things, I think, for people that are in retirement or at least getting close to the retirement age. They know they're not going to be able to make that money back.
Right. For most people, when the market goes down, even though it's just on paper, you only lose if you sell. But if you're in a position where you're getting close to retirement, you're planning on selling. You're planning on using that to pay for things.
Correct.
So the thing that this brings to the table is you're going to have the same market movements. You're going to have the same up and down, but the income is going to stay the same. Even if we take it all the way back to the basics, if it's a preferred stock or a bond, it doesn't matter what happens to the price. The contractual obligation is to pay the same amount of money. And these things in closed-end funds, they will pay the same amount of money. And if your portfolio is based on these things, it's actually a benefit periodically to have the market go down because then your yield goes up.
Right.
And so you can buy more of the same things and reduce your cost and increase your yield.
But David, just give everyone a little bit of backstory and a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, happy to. So I went to school for design and didn't really know what I wanted to do with that degree. It was a mix of sort of traditional art and also computer design. And then I joined a startup out of school, and this was kind of during the dot-com craze, and ended up doing everything at the startup, everything from coding to designing to selling to managing people and all this stuff. And I found myself managing these multi-million-dollar integrations in my early 20s, which I had really no business doing. But I was curious, and I was like a sponge, just absorbing everything around me. And I sort of went through these startups, 3 startups over the course of about 10 or 11 years. And then I realized, hey, maybe other people can benefit from my experience and what I've learned, and can I teach people that? And it was all about uncertainty, all about how do we test things. And so I started doing that around 2012. I landed my first client in San Francisco. And it's all I've been doing since then. I work with some startups, but I also work with big companies, but it's always on new stuff, like where there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think it's great. I mean, they have to test products. They have to take things to market or get outside opinions and things like that. So, David, what is sort of the process that you go through with a client? Let's say they're going to launch, or they're thinking about launching a new product or a new service. What's sort of the process that you take them through?
Yeah, I kind of call it the EMT process, which is, how do you triage business risk? So the EMT stands for extract, map, and test. And so at a really basic level, I'm going into companies that I really don't have a lot of domain expertise in, because I work with like toothpaste companies and paint companies and software companies and car companies. So I cannot be a domain expert. I come in and I say, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And it's usually with something of, we're not really sure this is the right thing to invest in. We don't know if anyone's really going to buy this when we launch it. And so I walk them through that EMT process. So we extract all the risk, and then we prioritize it via a map, and then we go test. And once I get them through that loop a few times, then quite honestly, they can run with it, and I kind of moonwalk away and let them be awesome. So it's really just applying my process to their domain and helping them navigate things instead of we're just going to build it perfect and launch it and hope for the best.
You mentioned strategy. I talk about strategy all the time because strategy is the secret sauce in marketing. And if you don't have a strategy, you literally are throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. You wonder why you burn up money, why you burn up time, why you don't get the results. The strategy is everything to you, Ben. But a lot of marketing agencies don't do understanding of strategy. They maybe fired up their laptop and said, oh, hey, I know how to run Facebook ads. I know how to run Google ads. I learned how to do this. But there's no cohesive plan. A good thing would be a web designer is a web designer. That is their expertise. They don't care whether you generate leads from that website. They just want you to have a pretty website, almost like a brochure website. And that's what we're kind of talking about with a strategy has to be building, really moving that customer or that client down the buyer's journey all the way through.
Yeah, 100%. So you're touching on an aspect that I'm trying to get at, where the difference between someone who knows how to click the buttons versus someone who knows how to tell the story. The strategy piece is what I absolutely agree with you when you say that there's a lot of agencies who just click the buttons.
It is the thing that really makes all the pieces work together. It moves people down that buyer's journey. It gets them to want to buy or talk to you. And that is a missing piece for a lot of, I think a lot of agencies don't really understand strategy. And that's why they burn up people's money. That's why people don't get the results. Because at the end of the day, people will want to invest in marketing and they will want to keep pouring more money into marketing if it's printing money for them. But there are very few agencies where it prints money for a company.
And I'll get to what you said in a minute. I'll answer your question. One of the problems, I think, is that, our minds don't work like the way we want them to work, which is we remember everything and our recall's perfect. And, if you and I discuss right now what we talked on my podcast, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we'd probably remember different things. So, that's kind of the way our minds work. It's like a box of stuff and with a lot of sticky notes, and they're stuck to the wrong things, and we get very confused. So the biggest problem that comes out, and the way I get to a lot of these people is usually through financial advisors, business advisors, business brokers, CPAs. I do a lot of education, a lot of online blog articles, which is where I just got somebody this week for a business transfer from parents to children. And the children have kind of been running the business, but they really haven't done anything to transfer the business. And then they read the article and they're like, oh, we need to do this. So a lot of that, and it's that kind of marketing and outreach that, reaches those people. But the biggest problem is that when you and I have an argument about what we agreed to do 6 months or a year ago, we are not going to remember what we talked about, right? We both may be wrong, maybe somewhere in between, or you're wrong and I'm right, but we're both sure that we're both right. That's the biggest problem, because that's the way our minds work, right? We're from a self-defense mechanism. We just kind of, just convince ourselves that what we believe and what we think in our mind is the truth, right? We don't say, oh, I'm not going to remember anything. I question my memory all the time because I work in this area. So, the biggest problem is, so as people get started in business, when I meet these younger businesses, if I meet them early enough, right, I try and encourage them to have, the basic documents in place, which would be like either an operating agreement or bylaws, if it's a corporation or an LLC, right? The rules of operating your business. What things can I do? What things can you do? What things do we have to decide together? What things have to be unanimous? How do we break a tie? If there's two of us, it's harder. What do you do? Do we have advisors that get involved? I mean, how do you really deal with that?
Tell us your journey, Tracy.
Sure. I'm going to start way back at the beginning. I actually started my career as an elementary school teacher. So for 12 years, I taught 3rd and 4th grade, different years for those 2 grade levels. And I got to a point where I was ready for a change. So I made a big change and I began going to night school to become a court reporter, actually. So I know how to use one of those little machines, and
it comes in handy with the computer, right?
Exactly. And during the day, I worked for a corporation in downtown St. Louis that supports law firms. So I was doing that by day, going to court reporting school at night. And what ended up happening with that business, a great business challenge to have, is that it just grew by leaps and bounds in a very short amount of time. So my initial plan of I'm going to work so that I can gain this degree, this certification in court reporting, turned into me utilizing a lot of the skills that all teachers have, the organizing and developing and doing all those sorts of things. The business went from just a handful of employees to so many employees. We were having difficulty keeping up with the growth. I realized throughout that growth how much I enjoyed doing a lot of the things that I used to do with kids. Now I was doing them with adults. And after working for that particular organization for about a dozen years, I went to a leadership seminar and watched the person at the front of the room and thought, that's what I want to do. So that's actually how my business was born.
So tell us a little bit more about the magazine. I would love to hear more about it and who you serve and really the purpose behind your magazine and what it does for you and your business.
I wanted to do something a little different than what's currently out there. There are some great magazines. Brian Wright does Success Profiles magazine, and Abigail Sinclair does Inspired Connections. Like, everybody has their own kind of take on what a magazine should be. And I was told by a lot of people not to do it. And so, of course, entrepreneurs are, if we get that pushback, we're going to say, I'll show you. And, we get after it. But I ended up starting it, and, I had reservations like everybody else. I was like, is this going to work? Is this stupid? Is this a waste of my time? But I kept at it, and I kept, the secret to entrepreneurship is always upgrading. It's always getting a little better. It's always trying to improve that skill set and make stuff look better. The first thing I did when I launched the magazine was I got 3 magazines from the supermarket so I could read about design, layout, and I could look at the colors and the way pictures are formatted, all this stuff. And I made sure they were very different. I got an architectural magazine, like fitness magazine, and a celebrity magazine, because all the stuff structurally is very, very different, but it gives me good creative ideas. So that was my start. That gave me an idea of how to make a skeleton. Skeleton is just, editorial, table of contents, ad, feature, main feature. And then I started thinking of fun stuff I could do that would be unique and different for the magazine. One of my big things about Shift is that we run a combination of both paid advertising features, and I absolutely spotlight the underdog. I absolutely look for people that are undiscovered diamonds in the rough, and I will help them and elevate them. And especially if they're just starting off, but they're really good at what they do and they don't have a lot of money, I'll approach them and saying, hey, I'm going to give you coverage because I love what you do and I believe in you. And it's made me so many good relationships over the years.
So I started on the mindset journey as a young adult, and it is because of my background and my upbringing. So when I was born into a home with really young parents. They didn't know what they didn't know, but there was a lot of verbal abuse and putting me down. And it literally affected every aspect of my life. It affected my health, my relationships, and later in my business. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. And I really struggled for years in trying to overcome these things. So, of course, like any entrepreneur, good entrepreneur would do, I went to tons and tons of seminars, read lots of books, and these are things you should all do However, it felt like I describe it this way all the time. It felt like a Band-Aid. It wasn't really getting to the core issue. And it really wasn't until I discovered this process that I do now that I was able to fix it and move on and shift things quickly. So I'm really passionate about helping people with the mindset piece, because I know it can just stop you in your tracks and keep you from moving forward.
No, I love that. And that's how most of us get into this business, right? We take what the struggle or the challenges that we've been through, the things that we've learned from those, and then we realize, wow, this is an opportunity to help other people.
Just enjoy being able to come alongside of people and help them find their best and bring it to their world, because if they bring it to their world, then they upgrade the entire world. And if each of us do that, and that's why I think at the end of the day, us coaches do what we do.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So I have to, so funny thing here, you would say you create an invoice that scares you. I would say, okay, now that you've created that invoice, double it.
Oh, good.
Double that, Matt. Okay. So Matt, who do you help and what are the things that you actually do in your business?
Most of my business, most of my serve is what I call it, is towards and for school nutrition directors and their staff. Mm-hmm. And then who I refer to as the LGs, the lunch gals and lunch guys, mm-hmm. who actually serve frontline with students. The bulk of my business is towards those people. I think they're the best that there is at school districts. And often they are the least appreciated and least recognized. Mm-hmm. And so when I come by and become their CEO, their chief encouragement officer, that's where that just rolls out. And here's something else, Ann, that I want to share with you. I've been doing this now directly with school nutrition directors and assistant directors and their teams mm-hmm. now since 2001. Okay.
It's a long time. Bobby, tell everyone a little bit more about your business. You run 3 companies, so I don't know which one you really want to talk about, but just sort of give us an overview about you and who you are.
Sure. They'll integrate. I started out 15 years ago as a professional speaker. I've traveled around the world, done 1,000 keynotes across 4 continents. That's where the TEDx talk came into play. And over the years, I was known as a soft skill leadership guy. I started getting expertise in networking, which is what my first book was. And so I've talked a lot about meaningful relationships, authentic connection, networking, all that kind of stuff. But then later on, things evolved to another topic, which was personal branding, became a very, very big topic, and it's still a topic relevant today. I've been talking about personal branding for a long time, ran several conferences and events on it, and pretty soon started a second company on personal branding. So the first one was about the training, speaking, and coaching that I was doing. The second company was around personal branding. And then I think when the pandemic hit, the 2 companies were events-based and speaking-based. And of course, those industries collapsed and were devastated quite a bit. So I had to pivot. And I did 300 Zoom calls 2020 to figure out what people really want. And I started identifying a couple of trends. And one was that storytelling was something that everybody wanted to learn, whether it's for their digital content or whether it's for managers working with remote teams. They wanted to understand that. They wanted to connect better on a deeper level. Mm-hmm. The second thing that came up is that most people are looking at their thought leadership brand now. They're either pivoting, they're trying to ramp up, or they're trying to have a stronger digital presence, even in traditional industries like banking and insurance and investments, where they don't really do much on LinkedIn or other platforms. And they realize, this is now a hybrid. We have to have a really strong digital presence. So working on the thought leadership brand across storytelling, content, relationships, the whole gamut and platforms became a big piece of it. So I started doing more work on that, particularly in coaching and online programs. Mm-hmm. And then Clubhouse hit. Then I got involved with Clubhouse. I saw the potential there, and I see I saw the rise and then kind of the fall, and now it's kind of sorting itself out. But what I'm seeing now is social audio apps are here to stay. Whether it's mm-hmm. Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, Green Room, they are an incredible way to build community, to build trust, to create something really magical because of the whole democratized aspect of the audio conversation. And so I've invested heavily in that, and we started another company called Thought Leadership Branding Club. It was initially focused on Clubhouse, but now we're looking at incorporating it in Twitter Spaces as well as with helping people use social audio as part of their integrated brand strategy. Because at some point, LinkedIn audio will come, Facebook audio will come, and so helping people figure that stuff out is going to be a big piece. So that's kind of where I've been, and that's where I am right now.
Fantastic. No, I love it. Let's talk about why did you decide to actually do it around what you're doing? How did you come up with your whole concept for your business? Because that is a big thing for people, is how do I create a business out of coaching? And what does that look like? So how did you come up with this idea that you have?
Developing a coaching business is just like any other business. Trial and errors. You have a name, you change the name, you go back and forth. The original name of my business is Synergetic Solutions. So I did that in my first couple of years in business. And at that time, I was open to an array of different individuals and organizations. As my business began to grow, I said, I need to pivot and really get laser focused and narrow things down and identify who my niche is. Mm-hmm. That is a process within itself, because in order for you to identify your niche, you have to work with all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds to really identify where you click, where you're making the most impact, and really hone in, if you will, on that particular audience. And so I spent a couple of years doing that.
How your business has evolved to where it is today, because you are doing a lot of things out there.
So Revealio is my for-profit. And you want to think of the word reveal, Revealio, and it means to reveal your awesomeness magically, right? Ooh. So it's all about revealing who you are to people in a way that causes them to go, what? Really? Oh, wow. That's fabulous. I'm so glad I met you today. That's what we want people to say or feel when they come across you as a business owner. So the way Revealio came about is that my background is in visual communication. So think graphic design, video creation, video production, web design. So I'm a really good person to come and say, hey, look, I have this idea, I have this thought. How can I visually communicate that? And that comes also with message, right? So I'm a creative writer as well. So that's how I got started this augmented reality. So that's our special sauce. That's what got us in Inc. magazine, is incorporating new emerging technology into our visual communication style in a way that causes people to have really robust interactive experiences that get them to squeal and delight out loud and causes them to have awe and wonder moments to make that experience far more memorable between brand and consumer.
Judy, I'm so excited to have you here. So thank you again for being here.
You're welcome. And you know what? I appreciate you loving that mission, because I remember marketing people in the past saying to me, oh, you can't tell business owners they need to give a darn about whether their people love their lives. And I said, well, that's not the people I want to work with then.
Yeah. I love that you're saying that, because I was just having a conversation with one of my clients this morning, and we were talking about employee retention and what, companies are struggling right now. A lot of people are leaving and they're creating their own businesses, and retention is becoming a big problem. And one of the things that can keep people in an organization longer is when people love their lives, they love their job, they're happy, right? They have no reason to leave. And how many employers don't think about that or are not taking the steps or the actions to ensure that people are loving their lives? They love coming to work every day. And I think that that's where the shift is going to have to happen. It is now an employee's world, not an employer's world. And I think people have to realize that.
Couldn't agree more. I think a lot of leaders either were blind to what it's costing them, and it's costing their people, but they're also really starting to recognize that it is affecting their bottom line for those that are all driven by the profitability. And then I think what would be great is when they start to experience the shift, because even though the Great Resignation is called the Great Resignation, It's also called the Great Reset. Mm-hmm. And I like to think of it that way, because what if it's time? It gives us the space and the circumstances so that we choose to reset. And then maybe some of these leaders that thought it was sort of a nice to have their people happy, start realizing it's pretty great to have us all be happy.
Mm-hmm. But she is the founder and CEO of Be a Beacon in Your Industry. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And she works with startups and small business owners who really are looking to really get started in incubators, so to speak. So what I wanted to do is let her talk a little bit about her journey. As we were chatting, I found out that she actually has a lot of experience, which really warmed my heart, because there are a lot of people selling business coaching that don't. Just
to put that out there. And she does come with a lot of experience. She's owned businesses. And so, Suzanne, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your journey first, and let's learn more about you.
Absolutely. I've actually been in the business development and marketing space for over 20 years. But prior to getting into coaching and consulting, I actually owned a marketing firm, ran that marketing firm very, very successfully. Decided that I was coaching and consulting while also trying to do fulfillment marketing, which is the definition of doing too much. So I decided to kind of make that shift over, give myself some more time to, be a mom and actually really focus on how I can help more companies. And I knew that in coaching consulting, I could. So I sold off the pieces of my marketing firm to the managers in each department, allowing them to kind of each run their own organization, coach them through to make sure that those organizations stuck, and they did. And just focused in on coaching and consulting because, I'm also a female. So I'm really good at telling people what to do.
I would love to know, how did you kind of come up with what you're selling now? First of all, tell everyone what you do and, what your coaching program is and who you help. And then also, how did you kind of develop your coaching process and your system and what you're going to sell? Because ultimately you're creating a product that you're going to sell.
Yeah. So what I do, I help service-based entrepreneurs grow their businesses. So, my clients are anyone from a photographer, a therapist, a bookkeeper, to more online businesses like VAs, social media managers, or agencies, those types of service-based really businesses. So right now the offers that I have, and it was definitely a progression, just like you, Anne. I started just 101, helping anybody with anything. Right. Just when you have a skill, you kind of also, that you can help people. I think the only one that I knew was I do want to help more service-based. I guess that's where my expertise also lies from the corporate world. I was in a service-based business. And also I wanted online. Like, I didn't necessarily want to deliver services in person. So that was my guidance in the beginning. And the offers that I have right now, I have a small group coaching program for entrepreneurs who are just starting, or maybe have like a side hustle where they're running at part-time and they want to move toward full-time, make their first, $30,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year of income. So I have a small group coaching program, and then entrepreneurs who are more established and are making already that 50, 60, and now they're trying to scale to 6 figures and beyond. And I have one-on-one coaching, and I work in 6 months increments for that offer.
Perfect. So let's jump in. You have been consulting for how many years, Dana?
So I started speaking at conferences and reaching out to schools about 5 years ago. So in 2017, and I went to a training, basically got my feet wet in professional speaking. At that point, I'd been, in teaching for about 17 years, and hadn't really done much speaking at the school level. So I started speaking at conferences and offering services to come into schools and give them professional development. So that didn't really take off too much until actually around the pandemic, when I think a lot of people who are independent consultants did get more work. And, I think that is just because of the need for that training, right? The need for, teachers had that extra time, administrators had some downtime. Right. So I did a lot of just speaking, virtually webinar type things. And then this past school year, a few more, in-person opportunities to work with districts. And, so it's something that's kind of evolved over the past 5 years.
And it will continue to do that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because the need shifts, right? There's ebbs and flows in terms of what schools need in terms of training and their staffing, and what the knowledge of their staffing is, the skill level as well.
What your primary coaching business is all about.
Yep. Thanks, Anne. So ideally, I like to work based on I'm 30, this is coming up 33 years now in business, continuous. So I've been around a while. I've got the grey hair to show for it. But I love to help business owners who are quite established, potentially struggling after a period of time and being in business and maybe trying to struggle through to scale their business or not understanding exactly how to go forward with it. And typically they're businesses of roughly 10 people or more, because when you've got 10 people in your business, traditionally you're going to have people problems. And the stuff, the work that I do with people is really helping them understand human behavior at a deeper level, and then how that impacts the business environment to get the best out of yourself firstly, and then the people that you're trying to lead within your business. So as I said, I've been doing this now for about 5 years. I'm off the back of a real estate career for 22 years. I still have a real estate company, but my focus right now is really helping business owners, just to get to where they want to get to in their business life. And it's very much situational based on the individual and their journey and where they're at. So I've got a lot of information that I can share with people around that. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And one of the things you talked about was they have to, typically you work with businesses that have 10 people or more, because at that point, they really have to be a leader and a CEO of their company, and they can no longer be that doing everything kind of person. Kelly, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I think you are just a delight also. So,
see, that's a great podcast guest when they give that back to you. I love it. So, Kelly, I'm going to just let you kind of jump in and tell everyone a little bit about your backstory and how you got into doing what it is you do.
Yeah, thank you. So my backstory is that I used to be an educator, and in the education world, as you can imagine, especially right now, I mean, just stress, high levels of stress. And with that, I do everything at 150%. And I found myself, my health was not, just having health issues from stress, was not present with my family, and things that I just didn't like the way my life was going. And so that is when I decided to make a big change. And I was in the supplement world anyway. And so I left teaching. And from there, then I was like, I do not want to keep pushing supplements. I want to get to the root of the problem instead of just, here's a Band-Aid. Nothing wrong with supplements. I use them. Don't get me wrong. And I also wanted to dig deeper. And that is how I ended up becoming a coach. And I do, as you mentioned, I do have 2 certifications. I have a mastery certification in the advanced transformational coaching technique. And then I also have I am a master practitioner of neurolinguistics programming. And when I became a coach, I started doing, let me just transform your whole life. And then I found that the root of what we were always working on was stress.
How you got into doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so my career has sort of been zigzagged in many different verticals, but I was working in cybersecurity, not the technical side. I am always very careful to say that. And the beauty of it was I was working from home after a divorce, and I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. The problem with it being I was never home, even though I was working from home. I was traveling and traversing the country, sometimes 3 and 4 times a month. And this was a few years back, so I know it's a lot more current now, but then it wasn't. And I still had my little guy at home, my 2 older kids that sort of were doing their own thing and were independent, but my youngest one wasn't. So he was getting some benefits, but not all of the benefits of me. And I had just come back on the red eye one night, got back home in the morning, and I was so excited to surprise them that I was going to be home early. And I walked through the door. And if any of your audience has teenagers, you can appreciate this. But my oldest son, he goes, it's about time you get back. And just went past me. And then my daughter, typical mother-daughter relationship, she's like, oh, great, you're home from all your partying. I did events for cybersecurity. And she felt that I was out partying all week because she would see all the Instagram posts and things like that of the parties, of the events that we were doing for these cybersecurity vendors and Fortune 500 companies.
And I have been through the divorce process myself. So I knew some of it, and it absolutely helping other people has given me more insight. I have a whole array of support people that I work with, meaning lawyers, paralegals, therapists, family counselors.
So you have a team of resources, which is amazing. That's so helpful that you trust, people that you trust. I love that.
Absolutely, because I believe you need a team around you. You need your support system, right? I also call them board of advisors, so that, when you do have that breakdown at 2:00 in the morning, you know who you can call, right?
Yes.
Or somebody to throw ideas at. And it all works together. And it's just such an emotional feeling just to be able to help and give the help to those that need it.
Yes. I want to kind of interject here something that you said, and I think that this is so important. So often when people are going through an emotional thing like a divorce, right? First of all, you helping them from the financial side, that is always one of the big things in a divorce. And so I love that you are able to help them from that financial side. I love that you have all the resources that you talked about. She just makes me smile every time I am talking to her or come in contact with her. She just is one of those people that just lights up a room and lights up the stage, and definitely lights up even the virtual stage. So if you are watching this on video, you're getting the best. So I love that story. And I know you told a story about going out and you had a teacher, I think it was, when you were younger, that had you going out and screaming in Yosemite. Is that right? At the trees?
That's right. I grew up in Yosemite National Park, and my favorite teacher, Mrs. Zierenberg, one day I was in 6th grade, and she announced, class, we're going to put on this play. And my mom was a storyteller, and my mom was a librarian, and she had also done some acting. And so I thought, oh, acting sounds really neat. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I am so shy. There is no way I can do it. But somehow I gathered up my courage, and I got the script, and I learned the lines, and I went and I auditioned, and I got the part. In hindsight, because I was the only one who auditioned for it, but still, I got the part. And my teacher, though, she pulled me aside, Mrs. Zierenberg, and she said, Carissa, I really think you're going to be great at this. And we can't hear a word you're saying. And so my little heart just dropped, and I thought, oh no, I shouldn't have even tried. And then she said, wait a minute, I have an idea. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go outside your house in Yosemite and say your lines to the trees as loud as you can. And so I did that. And that's really how I started learning how to use my voice.
Someone came into your path, I think, and introduced you to neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and that was a life changer for you. And then you decided you wanted to go on this course or on this journey, I should say, to really become well trained in that and a master practitioner in that. And you have trained literally hundreds and hundreds of people have gone through your program, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was the truth be known that I remember I just had this conversation with a client last night. I remember the exact day when I thought, yep, I deserve this. Yes, I'm going to do this, because that meant taking vacation from work and going out to California for 65 days, right? Not right in a row.
Wow. How many people would do that? I mean, how many people would take that big of a leap and be all in? And you were all in.
100%.
I love it.
Yep. I never looked back. And I know that one conversation that I had changed the complete trajectory of my life. 100%.
Yes.
And it's phenomenal. And that's what I love helping people do,
Oh, I love it. What great work.
The reasons people come to you specifically.
Quite often they feel like they know that they want to scale up, or they know they need to make a big change if they're in a corporate job, but they're lacking clarity on that.
Okay.
And sometimes you don't have that clarity if the interpersonal skills aren't going well. And so then your confidence is down a little bit, and you're really kind of questioning. It's the people who say, well, I had so much influence on my direct reports before, and now they're telling me I have to use all this touchy-feely stuff, and why can't they just park their emotions at the door? And so, it's a lot of, again, getting clarity on what are the challenges right now that are standing in your way of going to the next step, and clearing those out so that you step into the next phase, setting yourself up for success.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes people, they get really stuck in their mindset as well. And again, they sometimes think that they have it figured out, but then they just know something's not working. So it sounds like that's sort of the phase that they come to you. But I want to dig into just something that you said. Why can't they just park their emotions at the door? I think we're in a very different world. And employers or people that are running companies, they have to do things differently than they've ever had to do before, because people aren't going to have it anymore.
Sometimes, as you're in the same space, sometimes it's just like we feel like we're just do what we're supposed to do. It's nothing hard. It's just get up and do what you do best. Enjoy. I think that's the most important part of anything is working from a joy space. If you enjoy what you're doing, to me, you'll never work a day in your life. But anyway, that's an old cliche. But anyway, getting to me, I was fired out of the car business, and I was kind of bouncing back and forth. I'd done some air conditioning as a trade. My dad wanted us to have a trade, and then I jumped into car sales. And I'd done really good with that. I was considered to be one of the top in the industry in a short time, and they fired me. And I woke up with no car, no nothing, because in the car business, you had a demo, you had something to drive and you didn't have to pay insurance and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I woke up with no transportation, but I lived in a apartment building, was going condo, and they had a broken furnace duct. So I could fix that. I knew that, so I could just charge a little bit of money, and I figured that'd give me a grub stake to get started. And that's how I started. I started my air conditioning company with $118.42. I specifically know that because that was it. I paid my rent. I paid everything. That's my last. That's grub staking it, man. That's putting it all out there on the line.
And how many years ago was this, Terry?
That would have been in March of 1979.
Okay. I love that you're really targeting this space, because I think there's a lot of dating coaches and people out there, but I haven't come across really anyone working in the field or in the niche, I should say, that you're really working in.
Well, I think it helped because I found myself in the same place.
Ah, yes.
If I had been 30, I might have started working with 30-year-olds, but I found myself.
I need a dating coach.
Well, no, I can't even imagine, frankly.
Still in dating mode,
Yeah, just, go out and bat your eyelashes and you'll be fine.
Yes.
At that age.
Yes.
But I think it just happened because I found myself in that situation. And what was funny, Ann, is like when I did, and I laugh because just to put this into perspective, the last time I dated, the internet had not even been invented yet.
Ah, well, I remember those days. So,
when you really think about it, it's like, holy cow, that's a long time ago, right? I had been married for a really, really long time. Mm-hmm. And and then I was 60. I got divorced when I turned 60. So now that everybody kind of knows my age, but it was just so funny because as I went through my journey, that's when I started really hearing how other people were having that same challenge. And I think professional women, high-level professional women, I think even have a harder time.
I've been a human resources professional for over 25 years. And I know I look 12, but I'm not.
We both do, right? Yes,
exactly. So, I got to a point at work where I had a dream job and I was miserable. So I had to figure out something else to do with myself. I'm not, old enough to retire or financially, able to retire yet. Mm-hmm. So I needed to do something to make a living. And so through a spiritual journey that I embarked upon, or that the Lord thrusted upon me, I should say, I was able to determine that being my own boss would be the best way to go, and to start a business and use my human resources knowledge and experience would be the best use of my time. Mm-hmm. I am now in a position where I'm able to create what I call joyful work experiences for others.
I love it. I love it. So that is exactly what she's doing, is she's making other entrepreneurs and business owners their lives much easier, because she's taking a lot of that back end work off of their shoulders, which we are so not good at. I mean, my assistant was in here with me today, how you got where you are.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the backstory because that'll contextualize. So when I was 5, but the doctors, I came up, I was born in the 80s. and when I was 5, during that time period, there was this big push towards people getting diagnosed with ADHD and taking medication in school. And so I was one of those kids they were like, 2 + 2 = 4. I was like, okay, got it. And then they were like, all right, now 2 + 2 = 4. And I was just, my eyes glazed over. I was like, okay, how many times are we going to learn this? And so I was one of those kids in school that was having a struggle paying attention and got diagnosed with ADHD, was given medication. The medication prevented me from sleeping. The sleep prevented me from functioning. And so it snowballed. So what happens then is you become a problem to yourself. The members in your community we need to address Michael. He's a concern. He's really smart, but he's not performing at school, or he comes to school and he's really social. And so at a very young age, I realized that I need to create tools for myself. And that sparked this personal journey of transformation, where I went out, I studied something called corrective holistic exercise kinesiology, which is a mouthful, and a whole bunch of other stuff, which just sounds ridiculous when you try to explain it to somebody. But it really was and is the look at beliefs and habits and health and how they impact each other. And so that study led me to discover some really easy to apply skills and habits.
How you kind of got to the place where you are right now, mentoring and coaching other people. I know you just have a lot of experience that has brought you to this place. So why don't you share a little bit of your story?
Awesome. Thank you. So I started out in the corporate world as a merchant, aka buyer, for very large retailers such as Victoria's Secret, Target, Saks Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And my last retail job in the corporate world was with Shop NBC, which is the 3rd largest retailer. At the same time that I was working with that retailer, I met my husband, Ryan. And my husband, who is the sweetest, nicest guy in the whole world, suffers from anxiety and depression. And intuitively, because granted, this was before the internet, this was before YouTube, this was before all those things, I ended up just really helping him by doing a lot of visualization. Mm-hmm. So we actually would lay on the bed, clothed, no TMI here.
I wasn't going there in my mind. I was not.
Thank you. Just in case someone else was. And I would play the sound machine, play the ocean sounds. And my husband has always been obsessed with fishing. And we would go to the lakes and the rivers up in Minneapolis and fish on the weekends. He would be down at the Mississippi River at night. And so I came to realize that fishing really helped his mental state. It helped his anxiety and his depression.
How you got into doing what you're doing today.
Yes. So it is quite a story. It started with, I was living in the corporate world, as many of us, I think, were before we started our businesses. And I just didn't feel like I was improving anybody's lives. I was working with clients there, and it just didn't feel like I was doing anything. It was a financial firm. And yes, we were helping clients, but I just didn't feel like I was making the impact I wanted to in life. And so decided to start a business. I started an organizing business, home organizing at first, and then figured out pretty quickly that wasn't quite the right fit. I love organizing and helping people organize, but I don't like to do the yucky spaces like basements and garages. So I decided, okay, well, work with a marketing coach and decide, what should this really be? And discovered that I had always trained people on computers and it had never been a part of my job. So I realized that was my passion. And so I had an organizing business. What do you do with that when you're going to train on computers? So it became technology organizing, which really it is. It's right. A lot of digital organizing. And then I've morphed a little bit more into the training portion of it, and also do the productivity piece, which I love as well. I love geeking out over.
Well, there's some gold in here because one of the things I hope people do is really take their expertise and figure out how to build a business around that. So talk a little bit about your services and what you actually do in your business now to make that difference.
So realizing that really prevention is a goal here, I noticed there's a lot of limitations even in what I could do as a lawyer and working with coaches. I realized I think a lot of the secrets lie in the coaching industry. And my biggest realization I've had is that for most people, the biggest favor I can do for them is to even get them excited to take action to get legal. Because so many of us, even I can feel that temptation to kick that can down the road, but to get people to be excited to embrace it today, realizing how much it can help them be a good thing and help them even become the business they want to be. That's my goal. That's really what I want to do. If that's one thing people can walk away with, I feel like I've done my job.
Yes, I love it. And the thing is, you're talking about prevention, but really entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, they have so many different ways that they can be legally unprotected. And they're really leaving themselves open for problems. For example, as a business coach, as a business consultant, one of the very first things I did when I came into this space was made sure that I had insurance to cover if something did, if someone did claim I gave them bad advice or whatever. And you try to protect yourself the best way that you can. Share, what does 3D stand for? Why don't you tell everyone?
Sure. So 3D has two meanings. The first is it's for dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. Dyslexia is a term most people have heard of. That's difficulty with words. It is actually not reversing letters, which most people think it is. Dyscalculia is difficulty with math, and dysgraphia is difficulty with writing. And then the second meaning for the 3D is people with dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia are often 3D. They see things in 3D, in a 3D perspective. So my understanding is that you normies do not see things like that. But those of us with the DISs, we can see things from all angles. And so actually that is a strength that we have.
I was just going to say that sounds like a benefit to me.
Absolutely. Actually, people in NASA will purposely hire dyslexic people because we can see things more three-dimensionally than the average person.
That is really interesting, what you're doing today, and just share your expertise.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me. I'm super pumped to be here. My backstory starts, I feel like it's a funny thing to say now, but it starts back when MySpace was a big deal and I was in grade school. I was obsessed with making everything pretty and I accidentally taught myself how to code through that. So then when I was choosing a college major, I knew I wanted to go into something creative. I loved computers, and a counselor was like, try web design. And I was like, well, okay. And so I went in, I got a whole degree in it. And then, yeah, like you said, I thought I wanted to go into a sports graphic design, worked for NASCAR for an internship, and just realized that I think I'd prefer to enjoy sports and use it as entertainment than want to work at all. And the other thing was the office kind of space was a lot more corporate than I expected. And it was like everybody kind of had their lane and you were expected to stay in it. And that just wasn't an environment that worked for me because I have a million ideas at all times.
You're a creative.
I am a creative, right?
Yes, and you can't work in that.
The cubicle thing and just having like a couple of responsibilities just wasn't what was, I wasn't thriving in that. And so after my internship, which I loved, I found just the most incredible opportunity with a nonprofit, and it was celebrated that I had a ton of ideas. And so they hired me as their graphic and web designer. And then it turned into, I was doing sales and I was traveling the country and meeting with a bunch of people, and it was super fun. And well, I was there, total for 7.5 years. But throughout that, what was really fun and what got me to where I am now is we held a lot of events throughout the year. And so we were hiring speakers like coaches and consultants to come in and train our members. And I just found that those were the best people to hang out with.
Kyle, how did you get into doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, I think I would say it started back when I was part of a men's mentoring program. I grew up on an orange farm in the Central Valley of California, and I realized that farming life, though it's a beautiful life, it wasn't ultimately for me and my family. And I jumped into a men's mentoring program just kind of by happenstance. I was really behind in school, both with just my attitude and how I felt about a professional career, and super stressed. And I got a random phone call from a friend that I'd gone to India with, and he said, "Hey, there's a job opening at this men's mentoring program. Would you be interested?" And I was lost in my own life, but I needed some sort of something to do right after college. And so I said, "Yes, please." And so I went to the interview, and that started a 9-year relationship with that program and the president of the program.
Wow.
And every Tuesday he would mentor me. We would meet for lunch, and he was a serial entrepreneur that ran 30 businesses, and many of them were successful. He retired in his early 50s and started the program that's still running now. And I got to be under his tutelage for all those years. And so between my dad's entrepreneurial mindset with the farming and his experiences with Jack, man, I got schooled in such
you got a head
way.
Start.
Oh yeah, I was really fortunate.
That's fantastic. Catalytic leadership.
And it comes out of my own story. When I went to college, I went as a pre-pharmacy major. I had worked in a pharmacy in high school and thought that would be a great way to invest my life and help people. I made it to organic chemistry and decided that this is not really what I want to spend the rest of my life doing.
So you see my tongue hanging out? Okay, if you're listening to the audio version, you can't see my tongue hanging out or my eyes roll back like, oh, chemistry. Go ahead.
I feel the same way, which is why I'm not a pharmacist today.
Okay, there we go.
It's funny, though, that God never wastes an experience. Right. Even what we think is just a waste of time and a wrong turn. Because in my brief chemistry studies, I was introduced to the concept of a catalyst. A catalyst is something that you introduce into a mixture to incite or to accelerate significant change. And I had been a student of leadership for nearly a decade at that point. And as I thought about the great leaders that I had learned from and studied and read about, I thought, they would really resonate with that definition. Something that you bring in to incite or to accelerate significant change, to make an impact, to make a difference. And that's really where I began to merge those two ideas of what it means to be a catalytic leader. Because the great leaders, they want to see something change. They want to see an impact. They want to see a difference made. They want to be a part of that. They want to lead that. And so that's where the term comes from. It's from my own story.
Awesome. I know you have a program called Top Gun Teamwork. Who does not love that? So, tell us about that and how you got into this. I know your background, but how did you really get into the coaching space and training?
Great question. And it all started back in 2004 when I was a young instructor in training at the Air Force Fighter Weapons School. So the program that we know as the Navy's Top Gun program, the Air Force had about 20 years before the Navy. Just a side note. And I was privileged to get a chance to go through it as a student in 2002, and then to come back as an instructor in 2004. So that's what this patch is here on my shirt. It's a graduate of that particular institution. And when I came back to instruct, I was sort of mandated that I was going to teach a couple of core courses to the entire schoolhouse. So now, at the time I was flying F-15s. I was an expert in the employment of the F-15. But when I came back to the schoolhouse, I was going to teach all of our students, A-10s, tanker transport, helicopters, F-16s, intel, space, all the different disciplines, how to practice team accountability. And when I was given that assignment, I was not excited about it at all. Of all the boring things that you could teach, accountability was probably topic number one. But that's what I was told that I needed to do. And, I saluted smartly and took on this burden. So I started working on this course. And at the time, I'm dating the beautiful Miss Diane. And she was sharing with me some challenges that she was experiencing. She was on the management team of a company, and they were going through some transitions. And as I'm working on this accountability thing, and she's talking about some of the challenges that she's experiencing on this team, it struck me that maybe what it was that I was about to start teaching to the Air Force could cross-apply into business. And that's where the idea was hatched as a young captain.
So tell everyone, how did you get into being a leadership career strategist?
Oh, great question. So when I reflect back, so I started my company in 2009. And prior to that, I had been in the recruiting realm for about 11 years. And I had dealt with many, many hundreds of managers, helping them navigate how can we help you hire the right person, right? Let's get the right person into the right seat. And as I was helping them and navigating through that, I definitely noticed this interesting thing would happen where we would place a fabulous candidate, right? Think of like a project manager, right? Or a software architect. These are people who are intelligent. They have strong careers, great talents, always wonderful things. They would go into this new company and then managers were not doing a fabulous job of loving on them in an HR appropriate way, of course, right? But they were not doing the things to help that person to continue to succeed and grow and to develop in the company. And so as I noticed this and I started paying attention to it, I just thought, I need to make sure that I'm helping not only that new person that we just placed and got them into that job, helping them succeed, but also helping their managers to do a better job. And I'm not just talking about onboarding, the typical week one stuff of, hey, here's the benefits and there's the bathroom. Not that kind of stuff, right? More of, okay, what are you doing to really make sure you connect with that person and helping them to connect with the vision and the goals and all of those things. So I started talking with my corporate clients and the managers and I'm talking to them about this stuff. And so I would meet with them off hours when I wasn't doing, running all the recruiting stuff. And little by little, I just really recognized and just followed that strong prompting to move into helping them with all of the strategy around the career development for the leader and for their employees. So that's how it got started. And so it's been fun.
What made you decide to coach? What made you decide to go into business coaching? I mean, I get that you have all this expertise and background, but why coaching?
It was the years of internal struggle. It was the years of working in the business and struggling with the family role versus the business role, and the
surviving the holidays.
Yes, yeah,
and the tensions around working together. We lived on a family property next door to my parents. We were out in the country, and so we lived next door. And then I went to work and was at the office with my father all day. So
and then I joined,
and then Connie joined later. We were we lived and worked together for all those years, and that's a lot of togetherness. And so it breeds. You have to adapt to that, and it's not always a healthy adaptation if you're not trained, if you don't have the tools, and so that searching for ways to change, searching for better solutions and not finding them, and then eventually finding them made me want to coach and save somebody else the difficulty.
I think we all get into business like that. Same thing for me. For many years I made tons of mistakes, and I always say, "Gosh, if I just would have had an Ann back then, knowing what I know now, right?" And so it's really easy to want to take all of that knowledge and that experience and just really go out and make a difference in other people's lives to shortcut them and speed their results. So I totally get it. I think it's how most of us start in this industry.
The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Although I share strategies, ideas, and success stories based on real experiences, results are never guaranteed. Every business is unique, and outcomes depend on individual effort, market conditions, and many other factors. By listening, you agree that I and my guests are not responsible for your results or actions based on the content shared.
All right. Thank you so much for being part of the 300th episode. Please share it. Make sure that you support us so we can get this out to more people. We're really here to help you and to help you grow and scale as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a professional. And more people need to see and hear the amazing experts that I have on the show. So please subscribe, make sure you share it, and God bless you. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.